With us now is Bruce Torres. He's the Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. Bruce, thank you for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, my friend.
John, thank you for having me. Great to be here.
So I saw the statement that the SBA released, and it basically just called them out for what it is, said that effective immediately, SBA Gov will be relocating its regional office out of L.A., because the city has decided to choose, as they phrase it, citing illegal aliens over American citizens and small businesses. There's something to be said about that. I mean, it's one thing, I get it if they want to talk about how it impacts labor or anything else, but frankly, the attitude that you've seen from, Bass and Gavin Newsom really hasn't been a pro-business attitude, has it?
Well, no, but we look at the SBA and what it does from a rather unique perspective, John. If I could take a minute or so to...
Yeah.
We're a small business advocacy group advocating for one major aspect of small business support, which is the 23% of all federal contracts that the SBA is responsible for making sure this happens are supposed to go to small businesses. 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses.
Right.
98% have less than 100 employees.
Yeah, that's my wife and I. We own a small business. We're fit that category.
Nice. You can't make America great if you don't make America's small businesses great. The SBA is the only agency dedicated to protecting the interests of America's small businesses. Unfortunately, we are seeing a pattern of many things that are eviscerating the power and the impact of the SBA while it brags that it's doing a great job for small businesses. It recently got accused of mismanaging about $600 million in loans. And it just got its staff cut by 43%. It's got one of the smallest budgets in the federal array of agencies and administrations. It should have the biggest, protecting the interests of 99.9% of all American businesses. It just had, it's having its staff cut, which is shrinking its budget. It's accused it can't manage $600 million in loans, but it's supposed to get the $1.6 trillion of student loans to manage with 43% less staff. We see it's being set up to fail.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that. Well, and just the definition. I mean, frankly, small businesses being defined as having 500 or less employees, as far as I'm concerned, that's far too large a number. Small business should be, this may be a little too small, but I would say 10, maybe 20 employees or less. That's a mom and pop. And if you've got large corporations that are using loopholes to win contracts that are set aside for small business, that just makes it even harder for these small businesses to use the resources that are available to them.
Bingo. We have been suing the SBA and many other federal agencies and exposing the fact that they falsify compliance with the goal. They say every year 23% of contracts go to small businesses. No, they don't. Our legal victories, many congressional investigations and reports from the SBA's Inspector General show that the vast majority, up to 97% of all federal contracts, John, go to big businesses, and real small businesses only get around 3%. Here's the problem, and then we'll talk about L.A. real quick.
Yeah.
Big businesses get those 0.1% of companies are big businesses. They're getting 97% of all the federal contracts. They're already big businesses. They don't create one new job to perform those contracts. Whereas if those contracts were given to real small businesses would create 2 million new jobs every single year on top of the 2 million new jobs America typically creates. And now, L.A., we see the quote-unquote relocation. It's just taking the SBA. The SBA ought to be reformed, first of all, and greatly enhanced. Don't take offices out of a big, important city like L.A. Double or triple the offices there. It's a ridiculous excuse to say it's in protest because the city won't enforce the ICE regulations. Are any other federal agencies pulling their offices out of L.A. by that logic? We see it as a pattern to shrink and diminish the power
so
and
you
importance of the
you see it
SBA.
more about that than a statement necessarily against what they're doing with ICE.
Exactly. It's a cover. We see it as a pattern to shrink and diminish the impact of the SBA because it oversees the fact that 23% of federal contracts are supposed to go to small businesses, and it falsifies compliance with that goal, which is a nice way of saying it lies. It's a deception. The contracts are going to the biggest businesses in the country, starving small businesses, local economies, the working class, the middle class. You're right on the money about the designation. One of the biggest improvements would be to reclassify a small business as something much lower along the lines that you said. Depending on where you search, you find that the average American business has 4 employees, 10 employees,
right.
15 employees. So this is a huge concern.
Let me ask you this. By the way, we're talking with Bruce Torres, who is the Director of Communications for the American Small Business League. It doesn't actually surprise me one way or the other, whether they're pulling, for whatever the reason for pulling it out of California. This actually patterns off a trend. California, the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research says California has lost a net of 400,000 residents to other states from 21 to 22. That was just most recent survey that they've done. They're losing population left and right, and I think that's in part due to their budget shortfalls, to the way, right now, California is facing a budget crisis, a deficit of $12 billion. So is it any surprise that this organization, or for that matter, any other business, might want to move out of California?
You're well describing the California being the poster child for what many, including myself, sees as the controlled demolition of not only our small businesses, but so many of our institutions that we rely on. It's coming from top down. It's insidious. Real researchers are finding these NGOs that are not only investing in these Insta protests that are not organic coming from the streets, but it is the consolidation of small businesses into a few giant ones for really horrible, not only effects today, but also long term. It's a la what we did in the name of COVID, which destroyed small businesses. So these are red flags of epic concern, and it's great. As an example, riots in L.A., what's going on? It's great to have the chance to talk about, well, in the bigger picture of patterns and things like that, there's really horrible stuff going on that more people need to know about, look into, confirm, and then confront your local representatives, your state representatives, your federal representatives, your senators. Call into shows like yours, find all the info you can about it, and say, what's going on and how can we turn things around?
Well, and if people, just to give a bit of context here, and I know I'm coming up on my bottom of the hour break, but in Kansas, there are over 256,000 small businesses, according to the SBA. And these small businesses account for 99% of all businesses in the state of Kansas. And they also employ nearly 600,000 people, which is basically 50% of all employees in Kansas. So it just goes to show how valuable, how integral small business is to the economic health of the state of Kansas. So people who think, these small businesses don't matter, we need to really focus on the big companies. And I know that, for example, legislators, they're always looking at the shiny object. We just spent, what was it, $800 million to draw Panasonic to Kansas. But when you look at that figure that I just said there, 50% of all employees in Kansas work for small business, and it's 99% of all businesses in the state. Maybe we need to focus on doing what's right for small business and a little less about, taking care of the big guys. Bruce, I hate to do it to you, but I know I'm up on my bottom of the hour break. If folks are interested in in your organization, which again is the American Small Business League, they can find it at ASBL.com, correct?
Correct.
Bruce, I appreciate you. Thank you again. Happy Father's Day, my friend.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you.